Welcome to CivilNet. Our guests today are Garin, Hovannisian, and Alec Mouhibian, who are the directors of the 1915, the movie, which will premiere, of course, this month on the 17th of April in the United States and in Armenia on April 25. Yesterday was the first preview of the film in the historic Maxim Gorki Theater in the heart of Berlin, a city which is very much connected also with our past. Thank you, Alec, and thank you, Garin, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the time for this interview. I know it's a very busy schedule here at Gorky Theater. I want to ask you about the difficulty of telling the 1915, the Armenian Genocide stories through cinema. Your film was also about a play. We see it in the trailer also, about a theater play who is also trying to tell the stories of 1915. And you used a different method to tell the story of 1915. Why is it very difficult to speak about the 1915 through cinema?
Well, first, thank you for the interview, Harout. It is a big challenge for all filmmakers, I think, to deal with 1915. And I think part of the reason is because we have two competing instincts about it. The first instinct is to honor the past. It's to bring light to the millions who were murdered in 1915 and those who survived. The other instinct is to tell the story of 1915 in a new way, in a way that hasn't been told, to avoid the cliches of talking about history as history, and to try to give it new life and new meaning. And so the big question is, how do you serve justice to your ancestors while also trying to give new meaning to their lives that were lost? So that's a great challenge that we faced as filmmakers.
And the challenge that bothers almost anybody who tries to make any kind of story about the genocide is that so few people know about it, at least in America, relative to the masses. There's so many who don't know about it, that any story has this burden of informing about an issue that should be known. And that is a burden on a storyteller, and it's also a burden on the audience's expectation, because the Armenian audience wants the big advertisement of their suffering and of their past, which has been denied for so long. And this has created a very tense atmosphere of expectation when any Armenian genocide themed artwork comes out, especially film, which is a popular medium, which is supposed to reach everyone. And that's something to deal with, and it's difficult because it can slow down a story to have to explain what people should already know.
As you said, it's a challenge because every time a director, an artist makes a film about the Armenian genocide, it faces huge criticism, not only from Turkish side, also now from Armenians, from Americans, from Germans, from film critics, from the art community also. And you said in the Q&A session after your first preview at Gorky that you didn't try to appease anyone. How difficult was that part for you?
Well, listen, part of the problem is that we're dealing with something that isn't fictional. You're dealing with a pain that is so real and that is so deep that even our imaginations cannot fathom it or cope with it. And so any act of trying to bring art or cinema or fiction into the solution, it already requires of you a kind of arrogance in a way. And I think people are very easily offended when you don't serve the cause of the dead with precisely the noble dignity that deserves.
And it's impossible to serve with the noble dignity it deserves because we're not capable of it.
And art is probably not capable.
Art is probably not capable, and film is probably not capable of it. So at its core, there's a charade that you are participating in, and you hope that some part of the charade is good enough that it overcomes the false part, that that all of these endeavors have, and that's what we hope we've done. But there's no way to completely serve what happened in our clumsy modern ways.
And we see in the film there are almost no Turkish characters, and your film characters were mostly Armenians, and talking about how Armenians deal with the issue of the Armenian genocide among themselves, basically, and there were some critical approaches by you. How do you think this critical the presentations will be perceived by your community, by the Armenian diaspora, by Armenians in Armenia and in general?
Well, it's time to look at ourselves, right? I think that the masters, they're greater masters of political language than we are. I think that the case for the recognition of the Armenian genocide is made so forcefully and so strongly by others. At the same time, I don't think you have seen us shy away from that. I think the acceptance, the recognition, and the demands related to the Armenian genocide are fundamental to our movie. At the same time, they are not its driving force. It's interesting. We were imagining when we began to write the script a few years ago, how on April 24 of this year now, of 2015, we're going to have huge commemorations and marches all over the world. Our friends in Los Angeles will turn on their television and see tens of thousands of people marching on the streets of Los Angeles demanding justice for something that happened 100 years ago. Now, to us, that's normal. We've grown up with this shadow. This rage is so common to us that we don't even reflect on it. But we wanted to take a step back and to see what is really driving this. Why are we so full of fear and anger and unfinished business with history? And it was a topic that interested us, and it was a topic that we thought was unexplored. So among the many other things we explored in this movie, you're right. It's our obsession, the Armenians' obsession, and certainly our obsession with the past that we also put under scrutiny in this film.
It's our culture. I mean, we have a culture, and we need to. That's what interested us. This is a living thing for Armenians everywhere. We got a question last night from an Armenian in Turkey who tried to tell us that, well, in Turkey there are Armenians living, and that doesn't mean anything. The genocide, they live side by side with Turks. Why are you diasporans so obsessed? Well, to us, that is what matters. What matters is how this genocide is continuing to live in the Armenian soul. And that's the story we wanted to tell, the Turkish political story and the Turkish dilemma. There is a role for it in our movie, and we do kind of explore that indirectly, but that is something that's sort of it's a different subject that requires its own exploration, and we wanted to tell the story of Armenians.
In the past few years, we have heard about several projects based on novels and even some film trailers, but they were never realized. This was realized, and by two young directors. I assume this is your first film together. And how did you manage to keep this project low profile and get the funding for it?
First, I think it was a matter of personality. I think Alec and I are quiet warriors, and I think our methodology is to speak through our work. The other part of the answer is that it's very difficult to make a movie, and we certainly don't want to be part of a process of raising expectations and then destroying expectations. To tell the truth, it's always very possible, even when making our movie, that the movie will never happen. And to begin advertising it from a very early point and to face the possibility that the movie would not happen and to leave disappointment among people was not an option for us. We won't get into the specifics of the budget, but it was a modest budget, and it required people of the highest level of their professions, whether this was Serge Tankian, who composed the original score for our movie, or whether it was these phenomenal actors like Simon Abkarian, or Angela Sarafyan, or Sam Page, or Nikolai Kinski, first-rate international actors who joined our cast. These people did so at great personal sacrifice to themselves, and it took a great leap of faith for them. They certainly weren't pursuing finances to be a part of our movie, and it required every element of this production to be purely devoted to the cause of 1915. And so we had an ideal production. We had a production that, of course, had to deal with the practicalities and the logistics and the endless paperwork of Hollywood, but at the same time, it was a production in which we had many good soldiers.
Since we're on it, I want to talk about the selection of the actors. For example, Simon Abkarian, he played in different films that were also dealing about the Armenian Genocide. Weren't you afraid that this would be very cliche, for example?
Somebody made a comment that he's been in every Armenian Genocide movie, which is all two of them, other than. So it's tough to have a cliche about something that has only two examples of its existence. But we weren't afraid because there's a reason he's been in these movies. We think he's been underused. He is a star, and he is the star of our movie. And there's no actor in the world who could have played this part other than him. We wrote the part for him, knowing him, not personally, but knowing his
in fact, in the script, we named him Simon, and in the film, his name is Simon. So from the very beginning, long before he even knew we were writing the script, his name was in our script, and we were imagining his character into existence. And I would say the opposite of what you're saying. I would say that Simon Abkarian is full of complexity and power that hasn't yet been explored, and so it was a privilege for us to be able to make this movie with him.
What about the other actors, such as Kinski, Nikolai Kinski, who is a great talent? He was with you yesterday at the first preview at Gorky Theater. How did you come to these actors? How did you choose these actors?
It's a bizarre journey to find actors sometimes, and it happens sometimes in the middle of the night through channels that you never expected. In the case of Nikolai Kinski, our production designer, to tell the true story, our production designer knew him from college. Our production designer is a brilliant man by the name of Michael Fitzgerald, and he's one of the many people who we were very lucky to work with. And he suggested we were struggling with the choice of who to cast in this very difficult and challenging role, and he suggested Nikolai, and the moment we saw him on screen, we realized that he's the perfect person. So it happened all the very last second, and it happened through fate, I guess, and through the wisdom of our production designer. And sometimes it's difficult to cast. Sometimes it requires a leap of faith that somebody can do a certain role. You see them in different types of roles. You see him read the role. You have to try to put the pieces together. But in Nikolai's case, it was obvious from the moment we saw him on screen. And he was in Berlin. We were in LA. We were starting in 4 days. He had 2 other projects that he was set to do for good payment, and he canceled it all. He got on a plane. He came here to LA and to be in our movie because he believed in the story. So it was a great blessing to end up with Nikolai.
As film directors in your early career, weren't you afraid of dealing with this very thorny subject? Because very great names in cinema, such as Atomegoyan, who did the Harout, and Fatih Akın, who did the Cut, they were subjected to very huge criticism after their films that dealt with the Armenian Genocide. Weren't you afraid of it, like doing this film as your first film?
No, that's a very valid question. I guess the true answer would be that you expect a movie like this to be a failure. Faulkner had something that he wrote, which he said, even at its best, all art can be is an act of beautiful failure, especially when you deal with the topic of genocide. You know that you're going to disappoint. your fear is that you are not disappointing your own great-grandparents and the souls of those people. You know that you're going to disappoint some people within your communities. It was completely expected and it was completely predicted. Of course, we hope that people like our movie, but more importantly than that, we hope that people are challenged by our movie. What would be the point of making a movie that would simply serve the existing demands, just to put on screen what we already know and want? The purpose of art also has to be to challenge, to show people something that they've thought about all their lives, and for the first time to say, huh, I never thought about it this way before. And when you try to do something new, you're going to offend people. We've tried not to. We certainly haven't, as some artists probably do, we haven't pursued the controversy. We're not trying to be controversial. At the same time, we haven't been shy. We haven't tried to be politically correct. We haven't tried to please Turks or Armenians. We've tried to do our own thing. We had a vision a few years ago and we decided to pursue it. And I hope you find something in that vision.
Garin and Alec, you chose to do the preview of this film in Gorky Theater, which is a historic theater in the heart of Berlin. And actually your film was shot in another historic place, which is the Los Angeles Theater. Is there any connection? Is there any significance? What is the meaning of it for you?
Well, for us, we were looking for, when we were telling the story, the theater was a vital premise of the story, because the theater is a place where legitimately and genuinely in the present day, history is repeated night after night. Any play it's performed the first time, it's really written, and that's the first time it's performed, and then it's repeated again and again and again, very differently and with very different results, night after night with the same actors. And to us, there is a magic and mystery to that process, and that to us seemed very appropriate for the type of story we're trying to tell and for the existence of memory and history over time, and in the way that especially the Armenian memory and history has had to endure. So for us, the theater is a main character in our movie and a very strong presence in our movie, and being able to preview the film at one of the greatest theaters in the world, in Germany, which has its own not quite buried connections to the Armenian Genocide and to attempts to deal with the Armenian Genocide, it was a perfect place to do it, and to do it with it was kind of undercover, part of this beautiful festival that has been organized for the last 6 weeks by the Maxim Gorki Theater, and it was spiritually the right place to do it, and we couldn't have been happier.
Thank you, Alec. Thank you, Garin. If there is anything you would like to say to the Armenian audience and to our CivilNet audience in general worldwide, before your premiere in Los Angeles on April 17 and your Armenian premiere at April 25.
Well, after having this wonderful preview here in Berlin, as you said, and having official premieres in the United States and Russia, we're very much looking forward to bringing 1915 home. And there is no people and there are no critics in the world that are more important to us than those that exist in Armenia.
Thank you. This was our talk with Garin, Hovannisian and Alec Mouhibian before the premiere of 1915, the movie. We will meet them again also in Armenia. Stay with CivilNet.